with Jonathan Kuminga falling out of the Golden State Warriors rotation, the question now sits, are the Warriors going to be looking to move him soon? He can't be moved till January 15th, but which are the teams that are most likely to make a trade for Jonathan Kuminga? That's what we're going to discuss today. Plus, the Anthony Davis trade market is taking a hit because of his injury history, and the Lakers reportedly are targeting a couple of guards around the NBA to add to their team, and as are the Knicks. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host, Eric Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content today, y'all. And we want to start off talking about Jonathan Kuminga. Now, we've talked about the fact that the Warriors are probably going to be looking to move him. He's out of the Warriors rotation yet again. And there are a couple of teams that have been rumored to be interested in Jonathan Kuminga, and we're going to take a look at those today. We're going to look at those and rank them from 1 to 4 because there's 4 teams here. The first one is the Brooklyn Nets, right? When you look at the Brooklyn Nets, they sit in a place right now where they need a talent infusion more than probably any other team in the NBA. And with having Michael Porter Jr. as a player there, who reportedly they are looking to move off from because he could be ruining their tank, getting a young player in there instead of a player like Michael Porter Jr. No offense, Michael Porter Jr. is having a great season. I think he's 27, 28 years old, but if you have a chance to reset the deck with somebody as young as Jonathan Kuminga that can come in and do some things like that, that makes sense, right? Of course, they have Noah Clowney, who's a damn good player, Nick Claxton, who's a solid starting center, who they could be looking to move on from as well, and Cam Thomas is on his way out on a 1-year deal. Have a number of players that they could look to move to try to get him, right? So with the Nets having, all the lottery picks that they've had over the last few years, Igor Dimon looks pretty solid, right? Ben Serif looks all right as well. Adding Jonathan Kuminga to that young core gives them not only a player that they could see how he's going to grow over the next couple of years. He doesn't have a long contract, so it's not like it's long-term bad money either. It makes a lot of sense for the Brooklyn Nets to be in on a player like Jonathan Kuminga. So I have to have them as the number one team there. Next up at number 2, the Utah Jazz. The Jazz, we all know, have been a team that's tanking, and they're going to be tanking for a while until they find their talent. Now, maybe that is Ace Bailey, right? But this is a team that's going to continually looking to add talent to this team. Lauri Markkanen, Keontae George, right? They have some solid pieces on that team, and that's a really good place to be in, right? And they have some quality young players there that, once they make the decision to stop tanking, right, and to start trying to actually compete, a player like Jonathan Kuminga could actually make a lot of sense for that team, and we're going to have to see how that works out for them, right? So, with that said, I do think that when you look at Will Hardy, right, and, how he's being pushed by that team and stuff like that, Jonathan Kuminga is another player that can come in here and maybe kind of do some things. A dominant on-ball player that needs the ball in his hands to be the best, but as the Utah Jazz look to hopefully at some point start establishing some type of winning atmosphere there, having a player like Jonathan Kuminga who's been around and stuff like that, he definitely has the motivation also. We'll see. 23 years old. I think that the Utah Jazz are a team that's looking for, some good young talent as well, and he can make some sense there. Next up, the Sacramento Kings. As the Kings look to truly go into a rebuild sooner rather than later, right? Now, I want to be clear, it has come out that Domantas Sabonis is staying patient with the Sacramento Kings, even despite the losing streak and stuff like that. I still think there's no doubt that the Kings don't look at Zach LaVine or DeMar DeRozan as necessarily part of their long-term future there and the solution to what's been ailing them, right? So we know that they are willing to move off those players if needed. And the question then becomes about, for the Golden State Warriors, does either DeMar DeRozan or a player like Zach LaVine help them? And, the Warriors had a chance to trade for Zach LaVine before. Reportedly did not want to do it, even when, Chris Paul had a non-guaranteed deal where they could have came off of that. So maybe it's not Zach LaVine. DeMar, does he fit? He kind of fits the timeline as far as, they're trying to do this with the next 2 years with Jimmy and Dre and Steph being under contract. So maybe that's something that can interest them there. But we'll see what happens with that. But I think overall the Kings are a team that it makes some sense for them to try to get Jonathan Kuminga. They had a huge interest in Jonathan Kuminga in the offseason, whereas reportedly they just couldn't get something done wrapped around Moses Moody and other players like that. So that's what it is there. But I think at the end of the day, they are a team that has shown interest in Jonathan Kuminga. Kuminga reportedly and his team have shown interest in being with the Sacramento Kings. And so, they ran into some problems because of the base year compensation, where only half of Jonathan Kuminga's first year on that new contract will count towards salary matching. Now they don't have that if they wait till after he's available January 15th, right? So not only could the Kings give Kuminga the huge role that he desires, but being a ball-dominant player there, right? And they also have, leeway as far as in the sense of doing so, because he's not on long-term bad money at all. He's on a really reasonable contract as Jonathan Kuminga, especially for a team like the Kings that will be completely basically resetting the deck. Now, if you keep Sabonis in that as well, then there's that part of it. If you keep Sabonis and add Jonathan Kuminga, maybe you can convince yourself you're going to turn it around sooner rather than later. But it is something that should be at least on the board for the Sacramento Kings. And I think that they are, and some could even say that maybe they deserve to be ranked second here, maybe even first. I think that the interest in him has been legitimate, and it's been something that's been well documented over the last, 6 to 8 months. So, that's the thing that makes some sense for the Kings. The Kings are just an anomaly all in themselves. We don't know exactly what they plan on doing with the roster at any point in time, and that's the thing that makes it so hard to judge for that team. But at $22 million this year, a team option at $24 million the year after that, you're not attaching yourself to long-term bad money. And so they can make the decision to pick up his option at the end of the year, and then he can become an unrestricted free agent after them giving a chance to have that longer leash than what Steve Kerr has given him to really see what Jonathan Kuminga can turn into. All right, moving on from that, the last team out of these four that are on my list, and that's my Chicago Bulls. Now, the problem with the Bulls is that the Bulls have been a team that really doesn't want to get worse, they want to take a step back, to take a longer-term step forward. They were, much like the Kings, a team that showed a ton of interest in Jonathan Kuminga in the offseason, right? And the Bulls do have some solid players up and down that roster. Now, Jonathan Kuminga has never played with a distributor of a point guard like Josh Giddey. Not to say that Steph also can't pass the ball. That's not what I'm saying there before people start trying to kill me in the comments, right? But putting Jonathan Kuminga on the Chicago Bulls, a team that kind of moved away from isolation basketball, there's some questions there. But if the Warriors do have an interest in like a Nikola Vucevic, right, or a package that involves even Isaac Okoro on that team, as well as they need some defenders, and that type of players worked well for the Warriors before as well, something may be able to get done. Right now, the question then becomes about, does the system fit Jonathan Kuminga better than what the Warriors system does? And I have my questions in regards to that, right? But the fact of the matter is that fit as a ball-dominant wing alongside Josh Giddey, who is already ball-dominant, and the Bulls are all in on him as their point guard of the present and the future, there's just some doubt of the fit there. And if that's the question, would the Bulls really be willing to sacrifice some of the depth that they've built, that they've talked a lot about, to get that deal done? And that's the teams that I look. So just to recap, at number 1, the Brooklyn Nets, because they just need a talent infusion. At number 2, the Utah Jazz, because I think the Jazz, once they make that shift and decide to start actually trying to win basketball games, they have a solid enough roster to win some games, right? Then 3, the Sacramento Kings, and then 4, the Chicago Bulls. Those are the teams that I think are the most interested and the ones that we should look out for as that January 15th date gets closer, and they could be interested in Jonathan Kuminga. But moving on from that, right, I want to talk about Anthony Davis, right? So there's tons of skepticism. We've heard, first Mark Cuban saying that they didn't want to move on from Anthony Davis. They wanted to win. So now, we hear that they are. And this one comes from ESPN that says this: for a guy like Anthony Davis, it's hard to justify them getting a 35% max when they aren't playing a ton of minutes. And that's the thing that apparently is holding on. The 32-year-old who has $120 million remaining on his contract is that teams are rightfully so raising some concerns about his injury history. And this is something that shouldn't be surprising to anyone, right? We also heard from ESPN this: they have to be very careful with what they do with AD. They can set themselves back years with the wrong deal. And this is real. Like, that's just what it comes down to. So hearing that there's some doubt that AD is going to necessarily have a huge market in front of him, I think does come down to the fact that he's injury history. But then again, if Anthony Davis wasn't so injury prone, I don't even know if it would be a question if a team even wants to move on from Anthony Davis, or question that. Let's turn that around. If Anthony Davis didn't have his injury history, there would be a number of teams lined up to give whatever it took to get Anthony Davis. But with the second tax apron and attaching yourself to over $60 million for a player that doesn't play 60 games a season at times, that's just the thing there. And that's going to be the thing that holds back this possibly going and getting any team going after Anthony Davis, is that the second tax apron is so terrifying for teams And when you have a player making that large of a part of the salary cap, it makes it so difficult to have flexibility to do other moves. And that's where things seem to sit right now with that Anthony Davis front. So it apparently is a huge possibility and chance Anthony Davis is on the Dallas Mavericks after the trade deadline. What you then have to ask yourself then, if you're the Dallas Mavericks or any other team that could be interested, does the value come down a little bit? Or do the Mavericks look to just wear it out and wait till his contract expires? That's what has to be asked here. But I guess we shall see what's going to happen there, because there are just tons of questions on what is going to happen with Anthony Davis. But let me know what you guys think on that down below. Next topic before we get out of here. The Lakers have reportedly been linked to Herb Jones for a future first-round pick. And reportedly that now the Lakers are looking at that first-round pick, and they don't think that it has the value that it once did because of Luka and how good he's been playing and where the Lakers sit. So now they are willing to push in on that first-round pick to get a player that fits their system. And Herb Jones is a player that I love. I think that he fits just about any NBA team in any system because he's defense first, can hit some open shots, can play off any players because he doesn't need a lot of the ball in his hands or anything like that. And so Herb Jones makes sense for the Los Angeles Lakers. The question becomes about, is that something that the Pelicans want? We've heard that the Pelicans could be interested in moving Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, but we also heard that they're not on the market, right? So those two things, depending on what happens there, is what it is. Now, the Lakers do owe a top 4 protected 2027 pick to the Utah Jazz, and their 2029 first rounder is going to the Dallas Mavericks. So they have one pick that they can move, 2031 or 2032. That's the only pick that they have. And because they have that one pick available, do they want to go all in on a player that fits their system? And that's the question, right? We knew that this offseason and next is all about getting players around that fit Luka Doncic and the mold that they need to play now that Luka is a Los Angeles Laker. Herb Jones fits that. And the question then becomes about the Lakers is, do they go all in on already cashing in on that first round pick, and how much better does that make them? They sit at 4th in the Western Conference right now, but much like every team in the league, they are far behind the OKC Thunder. So do they have enough? Do they feel that gives them enough juice to help them get over that hump? And that's the question. Now, I'm somebody of the mind that you make every opportunity that you have to improve your team, you take that opportunity. And if they view getting Herb Jones as a player that helps improve their chances, then that's what you have to do. And I guess we shall see if the Lakers end up cashing in on that first round pick and trying to do that. Let's see what happens there. Last topic before we get out of here, the New York Knicks are a team to look out for. They are second right now in the Eastern Conference, much like they were last year. They've beaten teams by average point differential of 8.6, which is actually the highest point differential in the Eastern Conference, despite them having only the second best record, right? Behind them is the Boston Celtics and then the Detroit Pistons. So the Knicks are a team that we know, been linked to Giannis Antetokounmpo. They're always going star shopping. But reportedly, it's not stars that are being rumored in their trade targets right now. Reportedly, they have their eyes set on 2 guards that are in the Western Conference to potentially help this team. One is Jose Alvarado with the New Orleans Pelicans, and the second one is Dante DiVincenzo with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, the thing with the Timberwolves are they could be looking to move Dante for a point guard themselves. I don't know if the Knicks have that to offer, and if the Wolves do cash in on that DiVincenzo, they're probably going to want more than the Knicks are willing to give up with that, right? But Jose Alvarado presents an interesting case for the New York Knicks, right? Because they're 4-22 at the season, right? They have Jeremiah Fears there. They can move on from that. Alvarado's only making $4.5 million, so he could make some sense for the New York Knicks. But it's clear the Knicks are now looking to add a point guard guard depth to their team, and that absolutely makes sense on where they are right now. Are they going to be successful? That's the question, and we'll throw that one to you guys. Do you think the New York Knicks, do any one of these players make sense for the Knicks? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. But that's my time for today. I want to hear from you guys. Where should Jonathan Kuminga go? The Nets, Kings, Bulls, somewhere else? And should the Mavericks move Anthony Davis, or should they just ride it out and hold on to him? Drop your thoughts, comments down below. You guys can follow us at NBA Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything basketball related. I'll catch you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.